Record on this computer. Cool. All right, looks like it's on. Okay. Yeah, it's on. Okay. Great. Welcome, everyone. Today is our fourth part of the quadrant. We're going to talk about employment. James from Unchained Brands here, and
John.
Matt Starr and Johnny Gaparik. So right out of the gate, I just want to say real quick, for those of you who haven't seen the four quadrant part of our series, four quadrants are recovery, meditation and wellness, diet and nutrition, and employment. So today's focus is going to be on the business side, talk a little bit about employment. So our guest today is Matt Starr. So welcome, Matt Starr.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Awesome. So Matt Starr, drummer to the stars, Ace Frehley, Mr. Big, Matt Starr Coaching, mattstarmusic.com. So you've built up quite a business around your story, your career. So today what we love to do is just go through some of those tidbits and highlights. And obviously the four quadrant piece is really to try and help others, right? So what inspirational quotes or thoughts do you bring today to the storyline will help others? So that's going to be a big part of this. But first and foremost, love to just get like a minute or two of your background, level set.
Yeah, so grew up in a small town in Connecticut, 8 years old. Friend had a copy of Kiss Alive 2. I just looked in the middle, opened up the gatefold. I saw sparks and flames and dudes, and they looked like they were having fun. And I just was like, that. And I never had a feeling like that before, and I never had a feeling since. And I didn't realize until later in my life that I was clear on why I was here on this earth, to play rock and roll. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know about the business. I didn't know about fame or women or even the creative process, but I just had this feeling and it never went away. So we talked to the guidance counselor and she'd hand me pamphlets and I'd be like, I just want to play music. And oh, this school has music. I said, no, I don't want to go to school anymore. I just want to play music. But I had to really figure out what that was because you want to be a rock star. Okay, that sounds great, but that's like saying I want to win the lottery. And so how do you actually make that into a career and make that a reality? And that took me a few decades to figure out and get right. But, fast forward to today, and we'll talk about more of this. But yeah, I played drums with Ace Frehley, toured with Mr. Big, we did last record with them. I do coaching, which I really love doing that. And been playing with Michael DeBarge too, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, so making music with people who I grew up listening to and admiring, playing with friends, guys like Johnny, guys that I've met over the years, doing coaching and being a dad. And those weren't all on my dream list as I was a kid when I was a kid, right? But it ends up being a fuller life. So you talk about those four quadrants. It's like, yeah, you've got to have all four of those, or you can't do a big life. You can't do a big life without all those pieces.
It's your background, watching a lot of your work on just your Facebook posts alone. You're talking to a camera. It's inspiring. Like I was on the other side of it. And I was before we even got this company started. I was watching your videos. So I'll tell you how, Johnny. I don't think I mentioned this. Matt was playing drums at the benefit at the Whiskey last year at this time, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember I was sitting and I'm watching. I'm like, who is this drummer? I mean, you were just killing it. It was like it's just jumped out at me. And I remember I said, "I was Johnny. Who's that guy?" And it was you, man. So I think I started following you on Facebook, and then your posts are really inspiring. So not only are you a great drummer, but you're what really caught me was like your mental focus was like off the charts. It was like very unique, but unique and in a way that helps others, right? So I'm going to throw a bunch of buzzwords out. GPS in life, work smart, not hard. Remove the block. I wrote this down. As you can see, I'm reading. What is happiness versus expectation? The art of deleting. These are all like really cool things that I picked up just, looking through over the last year or so, what you did. Can you tell us a little bit about your coaching business and how does that apply to, like we were saying, the four quadrants and your experiences with some of your students and the folks you coach? Love to hear about that.
Yeah, so, and I'd be happy to talk about it. Yeah, so I had that dream when I was 8, but then like fast forward to 38, and it kind of really hadn't happened. And I was pretty sure it wasn't because of my ability as a drummer. So then I had to look at, well, what's the problem here? Turned out it was me. And it's like this and this, the heart and the mind, like they weren't in sync, and there was a lot of growing up that needed to happen. And so I went through this year of just extreme willingness, and there's a lot of details and a lot of miracles that happened in there, and the universe was all along the way going, yeah, keep going, keep going, here's a little something, here's a little something. But I went from selling a bunch of Kiss memorabilia that I had collected over the years, some mint condition belt buckles, by the way, to pay rent, to within 9 months playing in New York City with Ace Frehley, like I used to do when I was 13 in my bedroom. So I was like, okay, so I figured out something here, but I didn't know what I had figured out. But obviously I was, what I was doing was working. And so I started having musicians ask me, what are you doing? And I tried to articulate it. And then that just kept growing, and it turned into, can you do coaching? Like, I don't want a drum lesson, I want a coaching lesson. And I'm like, well, can I explain this? And is this teachable? And will this work for somebody else? Mm-hmm. And this is, now we're about 10 years on, and the answer is yeah. And what I learned is, first it was drummers, then it was just musicians. And then I said, this really has nothing to do with music. This is about having a successful life. And so I work with, all ages, men, women, all different careers. And, talking about the 4 quadrants, and what I found is, you get that hook, like you find out why you're here, that will make you do things you were never willing to do in order to have that dream. But in my experience along the way, I've had to get myself together in all of the 4 quadrants, not just the business. So yeah, be professional, be on time, be of service, da. But if my mind is crazy, when I go to meet Paul Stanley and we're going to play Love Gun, like if I'm not centered and focused, like I can mess that up, in a myriad of ways, right? Or just not crush it, like not do my best, right? So like, they say, how do you handle that? It's like, well, it starts in the morning, like wake up and meditate, and that starts the night before, go to bed and give yourself enough time so you got a good night's sleep, and so it's like this compounding thing. So because of my love for rock and roll and wanting to live my rock and roll dreams, I've had to get all of the other aspects of my life together, and it enables me to have a bigger life.
So meditation, I just started doing this myself. How long do you typically carve out to do that? Just curious.
So I do 20 minutes of meditation in the morning, and then followed by some prayer, and I might do some visualizing too, but definitely that 20 minutes. And if it takes a little longer to get the kids together in the morning, and then I take my son to school and I didn't meditate, I'll just park in a parking lot. Now normally I'm starting my work, doing my phone calls and everything, but I know that taking that 20 minutes is going to make the rest of that day way more valuable. So right. Just to carve out that time no matter what.
Great point. Carving out time, right? And really making space for everything. In fact, I'll be blunt. Today you posted on Work Smart, Not Hard, and you had your schedule. Love to
right.
Into that. I think, Johnny, you had mentioned something around this too, and how you operate in a similar manner. So I'd love
well, I mean, even touching upon this schedule and the meditating, and because I feel, and I don't know, and I love that you said no matter what, because I'm feeling unrestless now in these times, and those things are the first things I push away. You know what I mean? It's like the things that work, meditate, pray, like you said, be of service. I try to do all of those things, but the self-care, the self-love is the first thing I push away. Mm-hmm. And then I wonder how come I'm feeling uneasy. So I love the fact that you said no matter what, because I need to hear it. I know it, but I need to hear
it. Yeah, and look, every day I'm doing my videos and doing coaching, and I'm like, are you listening to the words that are coming out of your own mouth? Because there's always a nice reminder in there, and I always say, like, I'm a student and I never ask anybody to do anything I haven't done repeatedly and seen positive results from. And I don't talk about things that I don't know about. I didn't read a Tony Robbins article and then start talking to it. It's like, no, I gotta, I haven't done it, then I'm not gonna talk about it. But yeah, the self-care is always the first thing to go. I feel like it's like, God, please help me to design my life and guide me through the day. Oh, the crisis. All right, God, I got this. I'll get back to you in a minute. It's like, really? So like, the not important, like help me to find a good parking space, but like, some emergency happens. Okay, I got to take this one out. I'll get back to you. Now on paper, that's obviously not a good idea, but that's what we do, And so I think just having,
sorry to interrupt. Finish your thought.
Yeah, I just like have compassion for ourselves. Like if we've done it a certain way for how many years or decades, like, okay, it's just it's a reflex, like that's what we're used to doing. But to really I even just kind of like sit up, breathe, open my chest, like let it in, let the new ideas in, let the air in, let the space between my thoughts, the space between my words, which again, the meditation is, if we do it, there's not doing it well or not well, but like on a good day, it gets really quiet, and that's the goal, but that's such a huge challenge.
Do you find that do you write your schedule down every day, what you're going to do? Do you find that makes it easier to stick to those things when you want to maybe skip, these important steps?
I do. I find it's easier to stay on track, and it's also easier to go. I can't go, yeah, I'll do that in the afternoon. Okay, when? Because I don't see that. You got coaching till this time, and then at 2:00 you got this, and 2:30 you got a call with Johnny. So you're gonna do that activity that'll take 20 minutes when, And for me, that might be like, yeah, I'm gonna have a cigar in the afternoon. Okay, when? That's cool, but when?
Yeah.
And then so again, that's not really self-care, but I mean, it's a relaxing thing that I enjoy and it's not an issue for me. So, but that just gets kicked to the side. And then I'm at the end of the day and I'm fried and, go to bed and try and do it again. So I think, yeah, doing the schedule, what I found is it's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking, act yourself into a new way of thinking than it is to think yourself into a new way of acting. Right. So if I make that schedule, that's a physical task rather than thinking about being on time or like even, God, please help me to stay focused and stay present. It's like, that's cool. But if I do that schedule, that's a physical action. And so I can just pick that up and because, I'll do something, I'll talk to somebody, I'll kind of lose track of time. And then I go, what am I doing? Oh, I don't know. Schedule. Oh, 10:30. Okay, this, and then I just kind of follow. It's weird because we can be such rebels, but I can also be good at following directions. So if I give myself directions, that ends up being helpful.
I really loved a couple months back, you had talked about being in a rut. Maybe it wasn't even that long ago. I'm not sure exactly when it was. You talked about being in a rut, and it really resonated with me because Johnny, just before you and I met, I had a year and a half horrid rut. And it was like, it got to the point where I wasn't sure if I needed to see a doctor. Like I wasn't sure where to go. I didn't know what to do. I thought about energy, positive thoughts. And you actually call bullshit on it. I loved it. You're like, all that smoke is, those are just words, right? How would you say if someone today, especially today, right now, we're all going through so much, what advice would you give somebody in a rut right now? Doesn't have to be COVID related rut, but just in general,
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is to just accept it. Like I'm in a rut. I feel unmotivated. Okay. Is that okay? Can we live with that? Because the thought on top of the thought and the thought, then it just ends up being like a crusher. Right. Mm-hmm. So the second thing is to recognize that whatever we're feeling is the problem is probably just a symptom of the problem. Right. So I do a lot of work with blocks and helping people remove blocks. So it's like, if I get a block, okay, I'm going to feel unorganized. Right. I can't get anything done. That's my problem. No, that's a symptom of my block. That's not actually the problem, because if I look in other areas of my life, I'm pretty organized. So just say like whatever the person is feeling or thinking is their problem, that's probably not the problem. So I'm going to do a Facebook Live later, and it's it's slow down, not double down, right? So we think I got to work harder. It's like, no, just back off, learn what your symptoms are. So if you're feeling disorganized, you're not disorganized, you're overwhelmed. So just pause. That's not like the situation. That's just the symptom. And so give yourself a break and step back and kind of try and get a further look at what is actually going on, because it's that we have whatever's going on, and then it's our thought and judgment on top of that. And then that's when it gets to be just no fun,
Yeah. There's a ton of clarity there. Wow. I often get sort of stuck in tactical versus strategic, and you're like, well, what am I doing here? And you sort of fumble.
Right.
Jeff spent a lot of time building out the ideas of this framework, right? So the beauty of it was Johnny's story. It was like going from recovery through the process, and he said employment was so important. Johnny, that might be something to kind of talk a little bit about why employment is so important.
Yeah, for me, because there was another thing which was getting out of your own way, right? For me, when I pushed the limits so far that I was unemployable, and I was ended up on the street, and I just had stopped showing up for myself years ago, and so I quit music completely for the first year of my sobriety, and took a construction gig, just to feel worthy and showing up on time, never having an excuse why, I didn't have a car or whatever happened. I made sure I was there every day. And that thing led eventually back into music because I started feeling good about myself. So I'd like to talk about, getting out of your own way, your take on that, because, I destroyed my career and my life because I constantly kept getting in my own way.
Yeah, I think, well, if you talk about the recovery quadrant, I mean, if there's something that is an obsession, a compulsion, you're not yourself. You don't have a fighting chance until that gets, put into its proper context, and you're dealing with that. So that's, that would be to anyone who's dealing with something like that. It's, it's like, I'm having a hard time doing this. It's like, dude, if you're dealing with that, you're lucky to be alive. Like that's a separate piece. And until that's together and checked, then you don't have a chance in all the other areas. So yeah, I mean, I think that's amazing. I didn't know that about your story, about doing that construction work and just doing work.
Exactly. Any gainful employment, for guys like us, where I was thinking, if I'm not a musician, I'm nothing, because that's who I am. But that's not true. It's just what I do.
Right.
And
Right.
it became very clear that I was okay not being a musician because I was alive and I was starting to feel good about myself, which eventually led me back to music because people wanted me around again.
And you're a born musician. So yeah. I think the getting out of our own way part, I do a lot of work with talking about reframing things, I call them mind tweaks, but it's just, say you're looking for work and say you're broke. Okay, well, you go, hey man, can you help me out? I need a gig. That, unless it's a close friend, but even that doesn't feel good as, hey man, what are you working on? Well, listen, if there's any way I can help, I would love to help you out. So if you need drum tracks or maybe a producer, just feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help any way I can. That's a much different approach. Now it's the same thing, but even saying it feels different. So my energy is going to be different.
And it doesn't smell of desperation. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the person on the other end is receiving it in a different way. So that would just be like just a really simple thing of, I think, something that most guys and women can relate to is like, just putting yourself out there. Like, how do you let people know you're available without, handing them like a for hire flyer, here's what I do. And, like make it conversational. So just getting over our own, our own hangups which is just our ego and pride, and we can go down that route, but it's just like,
Sure. Oops.
sorry, Sean McNabb called me, sorry, to just go, how can I be of service to this situation? And I didn't understand service. Like I saw, I thought service was like you worked at McDonald's and the server like gave me my French fries. Like I didn't I thought it was, and then humility also was like that you were beaten down and just, I thought like, got homeless guy asking for a quarter was humble. I've met some homeless people who are not humble.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
being in a state of just, going through a lot and being like kind of broken down, that's not humility, but that's what I thought it was.
Mhm.
And then to realize that true humility is like, I'm just here to serve. I let go of the results, which is like, that's an ongoing thing. But like when I started doing that, I started seeing things come to me more. And then when I made myself available and just, how can I be of service? And what I realized is sometimes being of service was to just shut my mouth. If I'm in a room with a bunch of people and they're arguing about something, unless I actually have a solution, and even then, maybe they just need to argue it out. Even the guy going, "Hey guys, come on, let's try and work it." Even that can be not productive.
Mhm.
So like, how can I be of service? Like, I'm just gonna be quiet. I'm just gonna be present and like be cool and not be the one that's like adding to this. So I think the idea of service, which obviously is tied to recovery, and
Yeah, yeah.
humility, which I had to get my ass kicked severely before I had humility. And even then it was attached to humiliation, which that's not what it is either.
Correct.
But and eventually it kind of came back into focus.
When you turn the corner, Matt, you turn the corner at a certain point. I remember watching one of your posts and you talked a little bit about it. Love to explore that. What were the series of events that took you into positive energy and flow, if you will, that changed? What was the series of events that occurred? How long of a period was it in that transition?
The kind of the initial thing was about a year, but it's again it's still a work in progress, and like, getting from like sucks to like pretty good is a long way, but then getting from like pretty good to really good is a really small increment, but it's like a big one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the first thing I think was getting clear that like I was not happy what I was doing. And for me, I was a musician, but I was playing in cover bands and doing gigs in Vegas. For some people, that might be their dream come true, but for me, it wasn't. I was grateful I was making money, but I want to play with the guys that wrote the songs. And so I got really clear on that. So that first thing was just getting that clarity, and then just being willing to do whatever. And I think for the first time I said, I don't know, which I honestly, when I said it, it was like, I don't think this has ever come out of my mouth.
Mhm.
This feels weird to say this word, this phrase. So I started reaching out to guys that were more successful than me. Some of them were friends, some of them were people I didn't know, and that was even more uncomfortable. But saying, what did you do? Tell me your story.
Yeah.
And listening. And one of the first guys I reached out to was a drummer named Jason Sutter. And I liked him because he had played with like Marilyn Manson and the New York Dolls and, Foreigner and Chris Cornell. So he played with classic rock, new art. So I just liked his career, looked cool. I said, okay, I'm going to connect with this guy. And we were friends for about a year. And one day he goes, I didn't know you played with Kevin DeBro from Quiet Riot. And I said, oh yeah. I go, I never told him about me. I go, wow, I didn't talk about me. I was like, holy, I was surprised that I never, but I was just asking about him.
Mm.
And that was a big, again, surprise to me, but that was a big turning point to just be asking, you tell me your story. I want to know more about you and how can I learn? And then I think, like, again, Louis, you're saying before, like the self-esteem and all those things, to me that it doesn't come from meditating or sitting still or talking to God. Even to me, it just comes from doing stuff,
Mhm.
because once I've done it, it's real. Once I've showed up on time enough times, or like Johnny was talking about, just showing up for work every day. Okay, like
Yeah.
no one can take that away from you. You know what I mean? You did
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And so that's where the self-esteem and those things come from. But
Yeah.
look, it's a daily task. And sometimes it's cruising, it's awesome. And other times it's challenging. And those voices, they get loud. And, and look, man, I like to fuck shit up. I'm into destroying some shit. You know what I mean? Like that. Hey, man, good old days. You know what I mean? And I gotta I gotta resist that. I gotta, I have tools that have helped me in the past, but I think again, for me, still the thing is to just reach out, to make a phone call and talk to my wife maybe, but again, she's my partner. So I don't want to,
Yeah.
make her feel unsafe when feel like I'm cracking up. So, to be visible and just go, hey, I'm having a hard time. How are you?
Yeah.
That's
So-
that can still be a challenge for me.
Let me ask you, since you brought it up, do you like to fuck shit up still and stuff? And this is a question I ask people because our business is so specific. We're playing a few hours a day and then there's tons of downtime or travel. Or how did you avoid the pitfalls of idle time, which with drugs, alcohol, that took guys like myself down? What do you occupy your time with? Do you have any advice or,
Yeah, I do. Yeah. What I realized is I felt like I would travel and do a tour and then I'd come home. And when I was on the road, I was like holding my breath. I was playing and everything, but my life was on pause. And I just realized, why don't you just do what you do when you're home? So I started going okay, well, let me find a record shop in the area. Let me find a good coffee shop. Let me find a cigar shop. Those are my kind of three. And that gets me out walking around. That's what I would do anyway. I'd wake up, have a coffee, and then I'd go get some records, and then I'd have a cigar. Okay, let's do that. Let's do what we do. And also having my time structure. Now, with traveling, you can't always adhere to that structure, or if you don't have Wi-Fi where you are or whatever, that can make a challenge. But I still do my work, whatever that is. So if I'm on the road, I'm still doing my Facebook Lives. I'm still posting videos and doing anything else that I do along the way. So I don't put that on hold. Because I remember some old timers telling me back in the 70s, 80s, they would, they'd be getting off the road and that they would play with some guy who'd been around and he'd start making phone calls, from the payphone, a month before he was home. And this guy was just what's he doing that for? And then he'd get home and go, shit, I don't have any work. That's what that guy was doing. So I always remembered that. And I said, well, geez, now with technology, I can just keep in contact with everybody. So to try and keep my daily schedule as much as I can. And again, but not too much, because I need to play and I need to, sound check. And so if I'm rushing to sound check because I'm busy doing something, some work, some other thing that I feel like is keeping my schedule together, maybe that needs to get dialed back a little bit. Because again, I can overbook myself too. And then that goes in the other direction.
I can definitely relate to the life goes on pause, especially, those of us that toured pre-internet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those were different times, all those things that you said, and I think for me, a lot of my habits I picked up then, I had the road life and I had the home life.
Right.
And then for a guy like myself, I was trying to stretch the road life to bridge over a little bit into my regular life so I could keep the excitement going. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
And it came back and bit me in the ass.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say too, for me, having I'm married to a strong woman and having kids. I remember my first tour with Ace Frehley and I came home and I just felt great. And then I literally walked in the door and she's hands me the garbage and she's like, can you take this out? And then the next morning we're up at 7 making pancakes for the kids. I just had to get back to work. And then I talked to buddies of mine, it's hey, you just, you want to get together? Oh, I just got back from the road, bro. You were gone 2 weeks. It was in the US and you've been home a week. What do you mean? But these guys are, they don't have the family structure that they have to jump right back into that role. So again, I think that's something else too. Like I'm a dad and I'm a husband, and so I have these other jobs and this structure that I can't really get away with, like you said, kind of trying to prolong the road life once I get home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned your record collection, which is brilliant. So if anybody's watching this, scroll back on your Facebook post a while back. You had a couple of really cool posts about your record collection, which is pretty epic.
Oh, it's funny too, because you brought up Kiss Alive 2, and just, a side note, I remember getting that record for Christmas, opening it up and looking, going, oh my God.
Right.
And growing up in Sweden, it was wintertime, and I could still see myself gazing out the window, not looking at anything, just dreaming. Can it be possible? And then years later, I did get a chance to play with Ace also. Me, Eric Singer, and Ryan Roxy did a show with Ace.
Awesome.
So, definitely full circle. Playing with that guy.
Yeah, it's funny, those things that a lot of people saw that album cover but didn't have the same reaction. You know what I mean? So it's
when you said it, like the hairs on my arm stood up, because exactly the same.
Yeah. And for some guys it's sports, you know what I mean? Some guys it's seeing the New York Yankees and it's just like that's it, So yeah, we all have our thing. It's like in a song, what's the hook? What's that part you can listen to again and again and again and again? It's like any relationship that I have, whether it's my marriage or other long-term friendships, there's a hook in there. There's something that just works for me, man, just does it every time. And it's like, if you find that in your life, that's a huge gift, because most people have no idea, they have no idea. And if they do, they're not willing to do what they got to do to actually live from that place.
So also you're very good at reinventing yourself or diversifying yourself, which is, I definitely am impressed by that. Every time I look at your post, you're doing something more, something else, whether it's playing, obviously teaching, or being a counselor at fantasy camp, or millions of things. Is this something you've always done, or it's something that came later, you wanting to diversify in that way?
It's something that came later for sure. Like, all I could envision for myself was playing rock and roll. So like I didn't buy a pair of shorts until like 8 years ago, because I never saw Kiss wearing shorts. So as a kid, a teenager, I'm like, I'm not wearing fucking shorts, because I didn't know how to do that gracefully, right? Like, and I wasn't into, like Southern California punk band. So I was like, I don't see the Ramones wearing fucking shorts. I'm not wearing shorts, right? So literally didn't. So I only had that vision of being that rock and roll guy, and to a childish, extreme, where again, if I didn't see, Paul Stanley do something, then I wasn't going to do that, which, that's in my adolescent mind. But so no, I definitely only saw myself as a musician. And then I was thinking about things I would be interested in doing, because I was broke. And this is like, and I just wrote a bunch of stuff, and life coach was on the list, and I was like, God, that stands out to me, but I don't even know how to do that. And what, and the idea of being a rock and roller and a life coach, it just didn't seem cool. And then that was several years before I actually did it. But then when it came up, and it came up organically, I was like, oh, this is what that thing was about. Okay, got it. Yeah. And so it's just come about, I think, by just being willing to see where can I be of service? What do I have a skill at? What am I good at? And how can I share that? And it's none of my business if it's rock and roll or not rock and roll, or if someone thinks it's cool or doesn't. I'm sure there's, other musicians that are like, life coach. That's not my problem. I'm just here to help people and do that. That's what I'm going to do. So, but definitely not something that I had done in the past.
Yeah. I love that you're doing it, and especially times like these, those that we know, that only do one thing have really taken a beating during this pandemic.
Right.
And scrambling for what else can I do? Like you said, is this cool? And so, yeah, just kudos to you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
Yeah,
definitely an
thanks.
inspiration.
Well, it's definitely, I didn't realize this, but having these multiple things and also having most of them be remote,
Hmm.
that when all this started going down, it was just like, oh, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that I was creating that. But I think, all the people that I admire, they did multiple things,
Sure.
they were talented beyond just the music. They had a vision of something, or, even if it's like John Lennon doing, taking his celebrity and turning it into, you know, a social force. It's like
Mhm.
whatever, but just to be able to do more than one thing, and they all fit together too, which is something I didn't expect.
Sure.
It does. It all falls into place, doesn't it? It's nice to see. You all just pivoting real quick to your back to music. You have a new release soon?
Starting work on a new Ace Frehley record.
Okay.
Um, and do I have a new release?
Mind
Yeah,
field?
yes, there's a band called Minefield, which is myself and Brandon Fields, it's his band, and Todd Kearns, who plays with Slash, and Jeremy Asbrock, who plays with Ace and also with Gene. And that is coming out in another month, but it's available for pre-order right now. And that's good. And that's like one of those things where someone pulls all these players together and then everybody lays down tracks, and it was all remote, and then listen back, you're like, hey, we're pretty good. This came out good. I mean, like Johnny's done that before too, where it's like, everybody's good and the quality's going to be there, but is it going to gel and like be something special? And it was. So yeah.
Well, that's the magic of the internet, I suppose. Anymore. It's interesting.
And just to touch upon, since our company's built a kind of upon my story, one of my favorite people of all time, may you rest in peace, was Pat Torpey, who, you replaced. I don't know if replaced the right word in Mr. Big.
Helped out.
Yeah. He was the first guy. We were on tour with Richie Kotzen that said, Johnny, why don't you try doing a tour sober? Just hang with me.
Wow.
And I will never forget that. And I did thank him, but I don't think he knows how much that meant. It was planting a little seed,
Mhm.
Wow,
I'm so glad you told me that.
Yeah, you know how Pat was. He was the nicest man around.
Yeah, I called him I told him he was the Hugh Beaumont of rock, which, if anyone doesn't know who that is, that's the dad on Leave It to Beaver, which he would always laugh about that. But the fact is that dude was cool, smooth, handsome, great head of hair. And like that was Pat, and a genuine all-American guy, an all-American guy in all the best senses of the word. And I never knew he said that to you. And I'm not surprised, but like only someone like Pat could say that, because that could come off as not kind.
Yeah, it wasn't condescending, and I could feel he meant it.
Yep.
Because he even said, this Johnny I love, that's somebody I want to know. The other guy I don't want to be around. And he was honest.
Yep.
Looking back, I didn't want to be around that guy either. That Johnny was a dick.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up since we have that connection with Pat, and may you rest in peace. What a guy.
Yeah, that's a great story. That's great.
You guys probably together, you could talk for 14 hours about stories. There's probably so many interconnections between paths that you haven't really had the chance to talk through. So
I mean, one of the first, since our company is, in partnership with Musicators and bringing help to musicians that need it, like myself. For people that don't know, obviously, one of the first projects we did, you and me, Matt, was you were subbing for Chad Smith with Beth Hart when we're playing for Musicators honoring Ozzy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you were so, yeah, I'm at the rehearsal space. I walk through and I go, "Hey man, what are you doing here?" And he goes, "Why do you think you're here?" He's like, "Who do you think, who do you think suggested you?"
Yeah.
Which I've thanked him for since, and thank you. Yeah, and that was funny. And that was a scenario too, where like, you know, Beth was going to do this event, a couple songs with Chad Smith, but Chad couldn't rehearse, and Beth wanted to rehearse. So, they said, "Well, okay, well, let's get Matt down here." So I played the 2 songs, and then Teddy throwing in, like, being great. Teddy goes, "Hey, should Matt come down though, just in case?" Like trying to get me closer to the. And David said, "I think we're good." And I was like, "Thanks, Teddy. Thanks for trying." And then the day of, I get a phone call. "Hey, how close are you to downtown?" Chad's in his limo's like stuck in traffic in Malibu. And I was like, "Ah." And I went as fast as I could. And David goes, basically, whoever gets there first, that's who's playing, because Beth does not want to play the show without having rehearsed. And I get there and I hear the first verse. And I was like, "Oh no." But to be willing to be of service, and just, I was happy to be there. And then I ended up having a great time hanging out with Chad, getting to know Beth, David, everybody. And
Yeah.
it turned into so much cool stuff. But just, how can I be of service? No expectations. Of course, I wanted to play on stage with everybody, but like, just happy to be of service,
Yeah, it was definitely a good time.
Yeah.
So, James, I mean, anything else you want to touch upon? We're going to, cut this up a little, Matt, and
Mm-hmm.
because it's not too long. We'll have it bite size, because
Yeah,
that works
cool.
better. Anything that you want to add, Matt?
No, I don't
Anything
think
you
so. I
want to
think
promote, or
I have a new course called Remove the Block, which, that's, like I said, I mentioned that we could tie that in and talk
Sure.
about that briefly, if you want to. But I think, do you think we made the connection of just I love the 4 quadrants that you guys are talking about, and just really how important it all is to the work part,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you want to tie that back to the context of Remove the Block and from a course perspective? We can, we can drill into that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I'm just real quick looking at my notes. I have 2 pages of notes, and we touched upon everything.
Okay, cool. You want to ask me a question or something that would lead into that, or?
Yeah, so let me think for a second. I would say, I actually don't know much about it, Matt, so I'm just struggling here a bit, but let me
Yeah,
think.
or maybe like, what's the most common challenge I see musicians facing with their careers? I mean, I could kind of tie it into
Yeah,
that.
sure. That's
So in terms of like challenges musicians face, Matt, what would you say are the common ones that you see?
Well, with the musicians that I've known, and guys I grew up with, and then, people that I've done coaching with, it's almost never a lack of talent, and it's never a lack of ambition. There's some block somewhere along the way. There's something that gets in the way, and we talked about before, like feeling disorganized or unmotivated. That those come up as symptoms of that block, but we tend to think that's the problem. But really, there's the block, and it's in here, so you can't really see, because it's not in your life. So, right, so whatever we can see is just, it's a manifestation of the block. So the block is really the problem. So I say, like, if you keep cleaning up little drops of blood on the floor, well, that doesn't really help if you've cut your arm off, right? So, like, you're seeing the symptoms, but really, what is the source of the problem? So that's what I've focused my work on, and realizing that everyone I've done coaching with, that's what I've been helping them do. So I have a new course, and it's called Remove the Block, and it focuses, it's a 12-week course, and it focuses on exactly that, and teaching people how to do that for themselves as well, because that's what I figured out inadvertently over a hellacious struggle-filled year of my life. But when I look back and said, okay, what did I do that actually worked? Why did things change? I realized that I had actually done this. So I broke it down in 3 steps and I can now teach it. So I think that's that usually the main obstruction is a hidden thing, but we kind of get caught up with, I need to be more focused. I need to be more motivated. I need to be more disciplined. And that's usually not the problem.
Right. So continuous improvement. I mean, that's our motto here too, as well, with what we're trying to build. And I think you mentioned a handful of things, but being of service as well. Johnny and I spent a lot of time strategizing, like, if we give back in this manner, is this the right manner? How do we manage that? So there's a lot of value in taking a look at all your work for those of you who are out there. So Matt, thanks for your time, and honored to have you, especially early on in our series. So we'll get this up on the web for everybody to see. And Matt, we'll get your websites also at the bottom here. We'll caption it in as mattstarmusic.com and then Matt Starr Coaching. So
Cool.
thanks.
Thanks. I appreciate you guys reaching out, and I think it's really important what you're doing,
Thank you, Matt.
especially for the creative community, because to be creative, you need to be vulnerable, which is great. But then when things get kind of hard, we can take it harder than others. So I'm glad you guys are doing this.
Really, thank you so much, Matt. It was really, really great.
My pleasure. Thanks. It's good to see you.
You too, man. Say hi to Sean.
I will.
I can
All right, man.
turn this
Thank
off.
you.
Okay. Awesome, guys. Thank you. Yeah. Let me know when you got it